The Chargers secondary has been insanely good in 2025, and it looks like Joe Hortiz has found another late-round diamond in rookie safety RJ Mickens.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as a part of the #1 sports podcast network. But thank you to all the everydayers for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, Cam Hart, Tarheeb Steele, and now looks like RJ Mickens is joining that crop of late round steals by general manager Joe Hortiz. And also, the Chargers defensive line has been playing some really good football, especially lately. This is a very much underrated unit. And where and when may we see Trevor Penning?
That's the question. You spent a 6th-round pick on him. Are we going to see him? We're going to get into all that, but today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And David, I wanted to start today by talking about a player maybe we haven't talked enough about just because of everything going on. But with all the kind of, back and forth we go through of how good the Chargers are, can they still do it? How far can they go? The good parts of it, and the great parts of it sometimes get under talked about just because you're so worried about the big picture. And I don't want to do that with RJ Mickens, who obviously now has a couple interceptions now over the last couple of games, which is awesome to see. And with the Alohi Gilman trade, it feels like the Chargers just have not missed a step at all. Tony Jefferson goes out of the lineup. They still have dominant defensive performances. And a lot of that is because of this 6th-round pick out of Clemson, RJ Mickens, who was awesome in the preseason and dropped about 3 interceptions. Now that he's at the NFL level, he's found a way to take advantage.
Which is fantastic news. And I think when we saw him and when we watched the film on him when the Chargers first brought him in, we saw some things that we liked. I mean, I think the ball skills were there. He was in the right place at the right time. I feel like he was a trustworthy tackler in the open space and a guy that you could feel comfortable being that last line of defense defender. And so far, he's played good football for the Chargers. 157 total snaps, a 75.1 defense grade, 74.5 coverage grade, 10 tackles, only 2 receptions allowed on 5 targets for 8 yards, and the 2 interceptions that Daniel Wade just talked about. So a guy that people have said that, Coach Harbaugh said, hey, this is a guy that when he makes mistakes, he learns from them. He does not repeat them. Seems like he's coachable. Derwin James is able to tell him where to be, and he's able to go out there and make plays. So RJ Mickens looking really, really good so far, and it just keeps getting better for the Chargers secondary.
Yeah, man, it's crazy that they've been able to do as much as they have, and we'll get more into kind of the full room and just all of the guys. They've been able to not only, get to improve, but playing some of the best football in their career and also getting contributions from rookies so early on in their career. And we know the Chargers love to have 3 safety looks out there defensively. So to not have Alohi Gilman, to not have Tony Jefferson, to still be able to, basically be able to play the same way and not miss a beat is crazy. I'd also point out only 2 missed tackles as that kind of last line of defense defender in the back. No missed tackles really by him have gone for big gains, especially in recent games. But yeah, his passer rating allowed so far is 8.3.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's out of 159, almost 160. So over the last 4 games, he's played at least 30 plus snaps. To get that kind of contributions from a rookie is crazy. And I just think that he's just really solid, coverage wise, as a run defender, as a tackler, he's just been so solid. And it looks like, again, Joe Hortiz in the 6th round, a late day 3 pick, is finding another starting player. And I also want to think, it's worth mentioning Nico Reed, because it's not just the late round draft picks they're getting contributions from. Sometimes it's even undrafted free agents. And David, we had kind of seen the Jasir Taylor, experiment run its course, right? They don't trade Jasir Taylor, in my opinion, without having confidence in Nico Reed. He's paid that off. You could say the same thing about RJ Mickens, right? They made that Alohi Gilman trade to help bring in Odafe Owe because they knew they had this guy waiting in the wings and they knew they could still play at a high level. Also, Alohi Gilman's been great with Baltimore. It's been a good trade for both sides, but RJ Mickens was the reason they felt comfortable doing that. Nico Reed made Jasir Taylor expendable, and it was great to see him in his first real NFL action last week come up and not just make one big play, but just have an all-around solid game.
Yeah, I mean, he's played 36 total snaps. Most of that came in the last game and has a very good coverage grade and only one catch on 4 targets for 8 yards. And just seems like a guy who's real comfortable out there. It doesn't seem like it's too big for him. He feels very smooth out there, being able to adjust, turning his head around, looking for the football. Like that's veteran stuff, right? That's stuff that tends to come a little bit later. You don't always see young defenders, especially young corners, be able to, stay in stride, stay in and turn their head around, look for the football. That's good quality stuff. Like, that's what you look for in a young corner. He has that, and hopefully he's able to continue playing good football for the Chargers.
When it did seem like the Steelers, to a certain extent, tried to pick on him, right? They targeted him 4 times in the game in only 21 snaps, had allowed only 1 reception for 8 yards, gets the big pass breakup, allowed a passer rating of only 39.6. That'll do, and it's crazy to think that he wasn't even the most impressive undrafted free agent cornerback because they still have Eric Rodgers, who picked off multiple passes in one game sitting on their injured reserve. Another great thing about Nico Reed is because he made the team and has been with the team, you have him 3 years for cheap. This year and 2 more years for really, really cheap. Whereas someone like Kamani Vidal, a great breakout, but since they released him and had to put him on the practice squad, he's only under contract through the rest of the season now. So another kind of added bonus of keeping him on the roster for this moment is now you have him for the foreseeable future on a really, really cost-controlled contract. So awesome there. But really the story so far this year defensively has been the LA secondary as a whole, because the Chargers pass rush has been much better recently, but it's not been an elite unit for most of the year. Most of what this Chargers secondary has been able to do has been without the benefit of an elite pass rush that's just forcing terrible throws all the time. And right now, you're talking about a pass rush, David, that ranks 4th in completion percentage against, 2nd in passer rating against. The Chargers have as many interceptions as they have touchdowns allowed so far in 2025. 3rd in yards per attempt allowed, much better against the deep balls and stopping big plays recently. This group is on fire, and I think the craziest part about it is, like, they haven't invested very much in it, Tony Jefferson comes off the streets, plays at a high level. RJ Mickens, rookie. Elijah Molden, traded away for nothing, right?
Benjamin St. Juste brought in as an afterthought, coming in playing really good quality football.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the list goes on and on. I mean, look at the guys. I mean, that have really, because we haven't even talked about Christian Fulton, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, Dante Jackson, Elijah Molden, RJ Mickens, right? Even guys like Eli Apple and Marcus May, all of those guys have come in and been serviceable or better. And I just think we have to tip our caps and give the flowers out to, like we said before the show, like, this is giving Steve Clinkscale his flowers, giving Jesse Minter his flowers, because they have worked some serious magic.
They've been phenomenal. I mean, especially Coach Clinkscale, to be able to just, no matter who it is, I mean, to be able to bring them off the street with absolutely no time. They're coming in, they're understanding the game plan, going out there playing fast and providing high quality play for the Chargers in a pinch. That is coaching to a T. If you're looking for the applications of coaching right there, that's where it is. Also, no 300-yard passers allowed the entire season. No more than 2 passing touchdowns in any game this entire season. And they are also allowing a measly 132 passing yards per game over the last 3 games.
Woof.
This Chargers pass defense has been straight up dominant all year long.
And also, one thing we haven't mentioned, Derwin James getting back to an all-pro form. Like, there were conversations we had about wondering if he'd ever get back there.
This is
one of the first things that Jesse Minter promised to do and delivered on. And that secondary, man, is playing at such a high level that it is the ultimate equalizer and is going to give the Chargers a chance in some of these games against these better teams. But many of us have been worried about, hey, was Jesse Minter going to leave for a head coaching job? maybe we should worry about Steve Clinkscale leaving for a defensive coordinator job, right? Or another guy, Mike Elston, leaving for a defensive coordinator job, because that man has been a medicine man, miracle worker for this team as well. And we're going to talk about how underrated his group has been so far and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter and the nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. This season, it's so important to reach out and check in with friends, family, or even yourself. Just like checking on a teammate or reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while can lift your spirits, reaching out for therapy can make a real difference too. BetterHelp makes that first step easier by connecting you with a licensed therapist online from wherever you are. The holidays are a tough time for a lot of people, and I think it's an important message to make sure you're reaching out to maybe someone you haven't talked to in a while, maybe someone who could be going through a hard time. And I know for me personally, getting my own feelings out and talking with someone else about the issues that I've had has made it so much easier for me to go reach out to other friends and stuff I haven't talked to. And, I have some friends going through hard times, and I'm very proud of the way I've been able to more frequently be able to reach out to them and check on them more often. And a lot of that comes from therapy and BetterHelp. So this month, don't wait to reach out, whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself. BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. Listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon, because taking that step forward, support might just leave you wondering, why didn't I do this sooner? David, we still have more to get into because we did want to make this a Chargers mailbag day and let the everydayers get their contributions in on today's show. And we have a lot of really good ones to get to. So thank you to all the everydayers out there for making us your first listen and helping make us the #1 sports podcast network, which just feels crazy to say and surreal. So thank you guys for that. But I do want to talk about this defensive line unit, because that's another unit that it just feels like whoever they plug in there, they're getting meaningful contributions from. And I think that's where Kartik is coming from here.
Hey guys, this is Kartik from Toronto. Love the show and all the work you guys have been doing this year. Excellent as always. I just had a question about the defensive line. With Deshaun Hand coming back, how excited are you about this group's overall potential? They looked really strong against the Steelers, stopping the run early and then letting the pass rushers go to work once Pittsburgh had to throw. Do you think this is something the Chargers can sustain week to week, where the run defense sets the tone and the edge guys get to feast? Or do you think this was more matchup dependent? Thanks. Appreciate all the work you guys do. Bolt up.
Such a good question, and such a, underrated group, I think, overall, especially because a lot like last season, we went into this one wondering, do the Chargers have enough in that room? You're talking about Justin Aboigbe, who played 26 snaps last year, right? You draft a third-round rookie who had 0 sacks last year, and Jamari Caldwell, and then you bring in a Deshaun Hand, who's been oft injured and, was coming off his own injured reserve stint this season, and Teair Tart, who you felt good about. But none of them were Poona Ford and what he was in 2024. We didn't know how they would be able to piece it together. But once again, you look at defensively kind of where their weaknesses are. The pass rush, could be better for sure. And they still don't have that one guy that can just totally take over a game consistently on a game-to-game basis. But it feels about like they're doing is about as much as they possibly can for the sum of their parts. I still feel like it's a plus on this defense. And I think for the most part, they're going to be able to continue to do it week in and week out.
Yeah, honestly, I think the best thing that could have happened to this Chargers defense was getting their butt whooped by the Indianapolis Colts, because after that game, the physicality in which they played with is noticeably different from that moment on. They absolutely are setting the edge. They are playing more physical. You can see it. They're playing more technically sound with their tackling. Everything looks much, much better out there because of that physicality that they're playing with. It has completely changed the whole outlook of the defense. That absolutely starts up front. Just as on offense, as it does on defense, you set the tone with the spine of your football team. The defensive line has absolutely taken that challenge, and it has reverberated through the rest of this defense.
And I think once you got Deshaun Hand back, you have a little bit more of everything. You have Teair Tart and Jamari Caldwell, who are super disruptive in the run game. And then now you add back in Deshaun Hand to go along with a career season by Justin Aboybe.
Yeah.
And you have a little bit of pass rush to feel good about as well. Now, I still worry about where, some elite interior offensive lines could do against them, sure. At the same time, I think they're going to be solid, and, they get blamed a lot for the Chargers' run defense. Let's remember where those big runs were coming from. They weren't going in the direction of Jamari Caldwell, right?
No.
Almost all of those were containment issues, the Chargers not being physical enough on their edges, and teams getting outside and running backs going untouched. That's not on the interior of the defensive line. I can promise you that. But good players brings good problems, David, and that's what the dude has for us here. With the ascension of Caldwell and both Tre Harris and Deshaun Hand are free agents next season, which one do we let walk, or do we keep them both? I see us drafting defensive line in the first 3 rounds. David, what do you think here?
Yeah, I'm actually going to push back on that last part. I don't think they are going to draft defensive line in the first 3 rounds. I feel like, especially the fact that the Chargers defensive line coach, Mike Elston, has been able to show you that he can get guys, the type of guys that he likes, that fits his system, the way he likes to coach, and get the absolute most out of them. So I don't know if they would actually go look to take defensive line in the first 3 rounds. I mean, you look at all of the examples there are. I mean, there are plenty of them. Obviously, he just got a guy paid a lot of money to go play across town for the Rams. Obviously, you know exactly who I'm talking to. So, or talking about. So it's no secret there. So to me, when I look at this defensive line unit, the Chargers, and also when you look at the money, if they want to, they can bring all of these guys back. I mean, money is absolutely no object next year. They're going to have north of $100 million in cap space. But if the decision was on me, I think there's no way you can't re-sign Tre Harris. I think Tre Harris has been a guy who has brought that nastiness, has brought that attitude that you need on a defensive line. You just need it, and he brings it in spades. Yeah, you might get the occasional, unnecessary roughness penalty, but I'm okay with that, quite honestly, because sometimes you need it. I really do believe that. So Tre Harris, you got to bring back. I think with the emergence of Justin Aboybe and the way he's played in year 2, and with Jamari Caldwell on deck, I think I would be happy with that. If they decide to bring back Deshaun Hand, I'm okay with that too. I feel like he brings a little bit of pass rush upside from the middle of that defensive line, and you can never have enough of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be in favor of re-signing both of them too. I think mostly because you have those, couple of young players in Justin Aboybe and Jamari Caldwell to build around. And the thing is even if you do take another defensive lineman, right, which I think it's much more likely they would take an edge rusher in the first 3 rounds than they would a defensive lineman. But I wouldn't say, okay, you're so good here that it's not done. It's just not the top of their priorities. Obviously, the interior of the offensive line and edge rusher to me are the 2 clearest big needs. I know some people say corner, but you have Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still and Nico Reed and Dante Jackson all coming back next season. So I'd say, you could make the argument they should be taking one of those guys if one falls to them, right? Obviously, hopefully you're picking late in the first round, but it doesn't feel like as much of a necessity as maybe it has in years past. But let's switch gears a little bit here and go with Seth from Instagram, who says, if the offensive line was fully healthy and we had our running backs back, would we be the AFC favorites? This is interesting, David, obviously living in the hypothetical land, but I don't think that's crazy to say. If this team, even with, at 7-3 right now, had Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, had Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris back, and some of the other guys they've had injured, that they would absolutely be one of the favorites in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it and you look at the games that the Chargers have lost. You have Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt at 100% full capacity. There's no way you lose to that Giants team. Absolutely no way. You beat the brakes off of them like you should have. So, yeah, that's one for sure. I even think the Washington Commanders game as well, the pass rush doesn't impact that game as much as it did if you have both your tackles there and healthy, and obviously the running game to be able to control it. That's 2 more wins, and you're looking at, I think the Indianapolis Colts game wasn't really on the offense as much as it was on the defense, and the defense kind of got ran over, as I mentioned earlier on. But, yeah, I think absolutely. The way that they've navigated the injuries that they've had to go through and are still sitting here at 7-3 and one of the top teams in the AFC, I don't know how you could see it any other way.
And there's probably other teams that feel the same, right? I mean, you're always going to have injuries for the Chargers. It's just hard because they happen to their star players, and it's happened to multiple guys at the same position, which has really killed them, running back and tackle specifically. But yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert would have, 30 plus touchdowns already. I think the big thing here, though, is like obviously the interior of the offensive line would still be a big problem. When you lose by 17 to the Commanders, I won't just automatically chalk that up to the Chargers winning that game, but the Giants for sure. So you're talking about 8-2 at worst if you had those guys. And if you're 8-2, the same as, the Colts and the other top teams in the AFC, like the Patriots, everyone. With Justin Herbert, I don't think that's crazy, right? You still have a better record than the Bills and the Chiefs and those other powerhouse teams, the Ravens as well. So I don't think that's crazy at all. But obviously, that's what kind of made it so hard. So, seeing these guys out this year is just feeling like, man, if we had them, like they would be legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And I truly believe that. But we still have more to get into because there's still an offensive lineman for the Chargers we haven't seen yet. And that is Trevor Penning. Are we going to see him soon? Who is going to be playing tackle for this team down the stretch? And could we be seeing more Keenan Allen soon? We're getting into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Supply House because when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. There's nothing worse than having to wait on a project because the parts just aren't getting there. You can't get the parts you need, or might be deceived on what parts could be available. You don't have to worry about that with Supply House. Their trade master perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process even smoother. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a chance at a bigger payout. There's nothing like cooking up parlays with the boys, obviously one of my favorite things. But it also keeps other sports that aren't football even more exciting. Every game exciting, especially when your team is the one that's potentially making that late push. But big game this weekend. Chargers going to Jacksonville. Florida trips have not been kind to them. First chance, really, to exact revenge since that 2022 playoff game as well. I'd love to see the Chargers get it done, and going into the bye week at 8-3 would just be such an undertaking with the injuries that they have had so far this year, and they are 2.5-point favorites to get it done. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, we still have more of the Everydayers fan mail questions to get into, and thank you to all you guys for making us your first listen every day. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the guys at Locked On NFL. You'll be hearing one of them tomorrow. My guy, Tony Wiggins, who's with you every day covering everything around the NFL and does an excellent job on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Super excited to have him on the show tomorrow. But let's get to this one here, David, from Darren Wasser, who I think has a really good question asking, "Hi, guys. David, thank you for your service, and to all who have served. Who do you see as the starting tackles down the stretch run of the season? Trevor Penning, Bobby Hart." David, this is interesting, especially because, of course, as we've seen in short stretches, Trey Pipkins was good on Sunday, right? That being said, you just spent a 6th-round pick on Trevor Penning. I think we all think Bobby Hart should get his spot back when he comes back, but how do you, not ride the hot hand of Trey Pipkins as well? I think this could be pretty interesting on how this all shakes out.
Yeah, I certainly think it will be. I mean, it all depends on the health of the situation, right? We got to see what Bobby Hart's looking like if he gets back to practice this week. Obviously, that's going to do a lot. Now, if he is getting healthier and he's back, I firmly believe he should go back to right tackle. I mean, he's been great. I mean, 143 pass blocking snaps, only 4 pressures allowed. I mean, yeah, it wasn't pretty in the beginning because he had a couple of false start penalties, but once he found his groove, man, he played some really quality football for the Chargers. And for me, I think Trevor Penning goes to the left side. If it's not going to be Jamari Salyer, which I would be in favor of, I feel like when he got that spot start and had to fill in, he played good football for them. I think you got to get Austin Deckles out of there. I mean, he's not been the best so far. I mean, no matter what metrics you're looking at, it's not pretty. And so I feel like you got to give Trevor Penning an opportunity out there at tackle to see what he is capable of. You brought him in for a reason, and I mean, it can't be much worse than what we've seen out there so far.
Yeah, I saw Alex Katzen say that the Chargers don't think they can run the same way without Austin Deckles out there, or at least with Jamari Sawyer at left tackle. So that part's interesting. They obviously think that Deckles is the better run blocker, and with the heavy formations they've been putting out there, they've been basically telling you, okay, this is the way we're going to try to protect. And it's hard to kind of argue with the rushing results with Austin Deckles out there, right?
Yeah.
That being said, he's allowed 4 or more pressures in all of his last 5 games, and in a total of 26 over his last 5 games. So averaging more than 5 per game over the last 5. That is really bad. Also, you just traded a 6th-round pick for a rental of Trevor Penning. I get it's good to have depth, but man, it's going to be really hard to not feel like that was a wasted pick if that guy can't get in the lineup and help you right now, knowing that he really only has 7 games potentially to do that, right? Like, the only thing you're guaranteed by drafting him is that you get him for the next 7 games.
You're
so
trading for him, yeah.
With Austin Deckles, do they feel like Trevor Penning can bring close to what Deckles is bringing in the running game, but also bring you at least some relief as far as a pass protector? Because even though it's been pretty bad with Trevor Penning, in a short stint in the NFL, it hasn't been as bad as what's happened with Austin Deckles so far. So the Trey Pipkins, Bobby Hart thing could get interesting if Trey Pipkins plays really well again this week. I mean, 1 pressure allowed by Trey and 41 pass blocking snaps last week. 1 pressure allowed in the game before that. So now it's 2 pressures and over 70 pass blocking snaps. I don't know. But I do think with Trevor Penning, it's like, if we're going to wait for the Chargers to lose before we decide to make a big change here, it feels like not good enough. It feels like 11 wins, right, Pop type of energy if we're going to wait until something bad happens before we make a trade. Just because you're winning with Austin Deckles playing poorly doesn't mean that he should continue to go out there, because it will catch up to you eventually. So let's get this next one here from Don V, who has a question about the hero of last week in a way. Do you guys feel like we will see Keenan Allen's role in the offense continue to diminish with the emergence of Tre Harris? David, what do you think here?
Well, I don't know how you could see his role as diminished. He's only had 1 game where he's had less than 20 snaps. And I mean, plenty of the games where he's had 30 or 40 plus. So I don't, just because he's not like fully targeted, 10, 15 times doesn't mean that his role is diminished. And I think for Tre Harris, like, they want to get Tre Harris on the field. I mean, he's an asset, a huge asset as a run blocker. I mean, they're using him to pull a lot, to be one of those lead blockers, to pick off a linebacker or pick off a safety and, try to seal that off to create a big run. And it's been very effective. And I think, he's shown that, when he's given those opportunities to, be able to pick up a big catch on a 3rd down, a 4th down, he's been able to make those. And that's only going to breed confidence in him and from the quarterback. So they're going to give him more opportunities, but Keenan Allen's role is also to get attention away from Ladd. And I think you've seen Ladd have a lot of success recently with what he's done and the stats that he's put up. So it's just a more well-rounded offense, especially from a skills standpoint, when you have Keenan out there, when you have Arande out there, when you have Tre Harris getting mixed in, you have a lot of different mouths to feed, a lot of weapons to utilize. And sometimes, that's not going to be everybody getting 5-6 targets in a game.
Yeah, I think part of this, though, is just, he had at least 4 catches in each of the Chargers' first 8 games, and he has only 4 catches over the last 2 weeks. His snap count did bump back up to normal, but I mean, in weeks 8 and 9, he had a total of 37 snaps or 38 snaps, and then this week he had 37 snaps. So I do think it's game plan specific. I think the other big part of it too is they just haven't really had him out there on a lot of running downs, and it'd be interesting to see kind of how he feels about it. When they're obvious passing situations, he's usually out there, right? So, for example, during those, really 4 games that the snap count dipped a little bit, he had like a total of 15 of those snaps being run blocking snaps. So he was basically not out there for more than, 6 or 7 run blocking snaps in any one game. And I think that's formationally them going heavy to trying to protect Justin Herbert, only having a couple wide receivers out in the field. But it's been Quentin Johnston that's actually, taking snaps away, if you are arguing that, because he's actually led the Chargers wide receivers in snaps over the last 2 games. So there's different things, obviously, Quentin Johnston brings to the table. I think last week it was the threat of just being able to throw it out to him and have him pick up 7 yards, 15 yards, and he brings that to the table, and the Chargers have that. They have a great yak guy. They have a guy who gets open all the time in Ladd McConkey. But I do think the big thing here is Keenan Allen can still play. So I think bigger games are coming ahead. I wouldn't worry too much about him only having 4 catches over the last 2 games. I mean, we've seen that with Ladd McConkey kind of disappearing early on in the season. We've seen that happen when you have as many guys as they have. It's going to happen to a certain extent, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. ESPN does their wide receiver, basically next-gen stats, their metrics. They have Keenan Allen tied for 21st amongst wide receivers in open rating, how often they get open, and 22nd overall amongst wide receivers out of guys just, how often they get open, how well they catch the ball, how well they do after the catch. So the guy still has some juice left. I think we'll be seeing some more big games from him, coming soon. It was only a few weeks ago where he had 11 for $119 against the Colts. Obviously a game where they were trailing and had to try to, win a shootout. But still, I think this is just kind of an ebbs and flow thing. He was back up to kind of his normal snap count last week, and the only guys that are consistently out snapping him are Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey, not always Tre Harris. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday with Locked On Chargers and Locked On Jaguars. My boy Tony Wiggins, one of the best on the network. I think you guys are really going to enjoy that show. And we're going to tell you exactly kind of what needs to happen and what the biggest matchups are for it. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media, where you can also hit us up for fan shows like this at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Couple of shout outs really quickly. Got to shout out my boy Tim, who has had 2 hunches when I picked the Chargers to lose, and he's gotten me both times. So he won a shout out on today's show because he told me the Chargers were no doubt going to beat the Steelers. And also a shout out to Clara and Saban, who won their playoff game in the Poway Friday Night Lights flag football game. 2nd overtime, crazy game. So shout out to those girls as well. But that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow with Crossover Thursday, the best day of the week. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.